But everything changes at 1066. You will want to put this down. 1066, William of Normandy. Where have we heard the word Normandy before? Yes, Brett? D-Day. D-Day. Normandy, France. We have the King of Normandy. At this time, France is not one country. In fact, it doesn't exist. It's in kingdoms, like every other place in Europe. The King of Normandy, the Kingdom of Normandy, invades England. And he defeats the Anglo-Saxons. The King of Normandy is also known as William the Conqueror. So if you hear that in history, on the History Channel, whatever, they are the same individuals. He's also known as William I, King of England. Of course, he becomes king once he defeats them. Over time, he eliminates most of the ruling nobles, the Anglo-Saxons nobles, but he centralizes the control of the shires and keeps their administrative structure in place. So he does not totally eradicate the Anglo-Saxon system, or their language for that matter. The Battle of Hastings is the main battle. That's historically, there's only about 5 major battles prior to World War I or World War II that changes the world. This is one of them. And for our purposes, this is the first one. The Battle of Hastings is a major incident. I did that yesterday too. Oh, should be of, not foe, of the shires. You might find a few typos like that. I tried to fix them this weekend, but I didn't catch them all. Maybe over 5 years I'll get them all. So, after, 15, 20 years, William I dies, and this strapping young man, his son, William II, ascends to the throne. His real name or birth name is William Rufus, but his English title is William II. Oh, let me back up here a little bit here. I'll let you write that. Just listen to what I have to say here. So William II is not a very nice guy. He continues the consolidation of the Anglo-Saxon system under him, including involvement in the church. He wants to be the one appointing all the bishops. Of course, if the king appoints you, who are you going to be loyal to? The king. If he has the power to appoint and remove, you're going to do the king's bidding, not necessarily what God says. That's a problem for the church. The church does not, and at this time it's a Catholic church. It's the only option you have. The bishops, the cardinals, the priests are all takes their marching orders from who? Or should? The Pope in Rome. William I doesn't think so. He thinks, no, I should have the power to do this, and you should do what I want you to do. And that causes a big rift. He also likes this thing called taxation. And he taxes everything, including what we today call a death tax. More appropriately, it's an inheritance tax. If your parents work their tails off and make a couple good decisions, they could end up dying wealthy. very wealthy. Under his system, you'd have to pay a tax on that before you ever got it. We got that system today. And the people were not happy with him. No, in fact, there was a series of events that nearly killed him. Suspicious. They're not sure what was going on there. And one day he was out on a hunting trip. Perhaps it was his brother. They're not too sure about that. But there was a freak accident that happened and he dies. His brother, Henry the First, takes the throne. It is thought he was probably behind it. Nonetheless, he takes the throne. He wants to gain some favor of the people. So he says, you know what? We're going to issue what's now called, this is your first liberty document, the 1100 Charter of Liberties. What my brother was doing was evil and oppressive. Evil and oppressive. That will be on a test. What was William II doing? Or how did they characterize his actions? As evil, and I'm quoting this, and oppressive. We're going to talk about exactly what those were in just a minute. But the 1100 Charter of Liberties, why are they significant? It's the first written form of government for the English. It sets the stage for future written agreements in terms of governing system, and eventually leads to our Constitution. The 1100 Charter of Liberties is the first written mode of government for the English people. And it makes the king subject to certain laws regarding what he and his men does. Before then, you had this thing called, and this will always be a problem in English life, it's a problem with all royalty, because power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The lust to dominate. We have two sets of rules for kings and people. The king is typically above the law. They're saying, in this agreement, the king is not above the law, and neither is his men. Now, Henry I doesn't follow this very well. In fact, most kings don't. But it is for the first time acknowledged, and the king signs it, that he is to not only uphold the law for him and his men, but that the people do have certain rights. And in particular, he's to leave the church officials alone. They are independent of the government system. Do you hear any connection to today's system? Maybe our First Amendment? First time this idea that the king is separate from the theological system.
Oh, the separation of church and state.
There you go. Okay. They referred to the practices of William II as oppressive and evil. What was those practices? Overtaxation, corruption, and oppressive rule. We're going to keep coming back to this for the next 918 years. Overtaxation, corruption, and oppressive rule. That's what William II was doing that was deemed to be evil and oppressive. Test question, test question, test question. What were the practices of William I that was considered evil and oppressive? Overtaxation, corruption, and oppressive rule. And part of that overtaxation is the inheritance tax issue. So the king, the way he was doing this, he wanted more of the land for himself. So if you, the son of that wealthy landowner, could not pay the tax, that meant the king would get the property, which most people couldn't pay a tax. Not as much as they were taxing. That was all deliberate. Okay, we've already talked about this a little bit. This charter planted the seeds of liberty in the hearts and minds of the people. For the first time, they recognize they have some of these rights. We're not just living our lives at the whim of the king, but we have certain rights, and the king has acknowledged that. Now, like I said, William I does not follow through on this. He almost immediately starts violating it. But it doesn't leave the minds of the people. Now, keep in mind, this is not necessarily for the peasants. There is a class system. The upper class, the barons, the nobles, landowners, this most certainly applies. But if you're just a peon peasant farmer, sharecropping or something, it's a little different system for you. But this starts to set the stage for the next 918 years.